Today we're going to talk about something fundamental, something that isn't about manipulation or trickery, but about aligning yourself with deep, ancient truths about human behavior, responsibility, and attraction. And the principle is simple. Women return to men who are centered, reliable, and oriented toward meaning. A woman does not want a man who mirrors her moods or panders to her whims. She seeks a man who absorbs her chaos and turns it into something ordered, something secure. If you cannot command your own emotions, if you crumble at the first hint of disapproval, you are broadcasting your unreliability louder than any words could conceal. Reliability is not just about being present at a dinner or texting back on time. It's about being existentially present, a being whose internal compass points true north, even when everything else spins out of control. A man who can hold the tension of life without lashing out or folding inward becomes rare. And rarity always commands respect and desire. When a woman feels the gravitational pull of a man who is both alive and unmoved by frivolous trials, she feels safe, she feels drawn, she feels called to move closer, not by manipulation, but by biological and psychological necessity. To be centered is to refuse to be seduced by every passing emotion. It is to stay committed to the higher order you serve, even when the moment screams for you to abandon it. Stability means you are loyal to principle over impulse, to meaning over temporary comfort, and that loyalty is magnetic beyond measure. A reliable man makes promises carefully but fulfills them completely, not because it earns him praise, but because he would be ashamed to do otherwise. If your word means little, your presence will eventually mean even less. Your actions must be predictable in the best sense. You must be a man whose course can be charted by those who depend on you, not because you are boring, but because you are trustworthy. Chaos will test your frame. It will poke, prod, and tempt you to fall into reaction instead of conscious action. But every time you hold your ground, you carve deeper respect into the minds of those around you. Women especially have a sixth sense for weakness disguised as kindness, for timidity masked as flexibility, and they instinctively recoil from it, even if they cannot articulate why. You must be the kind of man whose very nature says, "You can rely on me even when I cannot rely on anyone else." That reliability must not be contingent on approval, applause, or reward. It must be a function of your character, as inseparable from you as your own breath. A man who needs permission to be strong will never be strong enough to lead, protect, or inspire. You do not beg for loyalty, you command it through the seriousness with which you take yourself and your responsibility. Every time you choose what is difficult but right over what is easy and convenient, you etch the silhouette of a man who cannot be abandoned lightly. A man who is reliable does not need to fear loss because he knows that what is true and valuable will recognize him in return. The centered man does not chase, he invites. He does not manipulate, he magnetizes. He does not demand attention, he earns it through the relentless discipline of who he has become. In a world starving for genuine strength, to be centered and reliable is an act of rebellion and an act of service at once. A man who is an island of order in a sea of disorder becomes not only attractive but unforgettable. If you can be the stillness in the storm, if you can be the mountain amidst the earthquake, then you become the axis around which life itself can turn. You must be such that losing you feels like losing a home. You must be so reliable that your absence is not just noticed, but grieved. A woman will always return to the man who gave her not thrills, not fleeting pleasure, but the kind of shelter that makes thriving possible. Do not aim to impress her emotions. Aim to impress her soul. Do not try to dazzle her senses. Aim to nourish her need for security, for belief, for trust. Reliability does not mean rigidity. You must be flexible, but only in service of your highest commitments, not out of fear of confrontation. Centeredness is not stubbornness. It is intelligent, intentional consistency in a world addicted to impulsivity. You must walk the narrow path between chaos and order so well that your very life becomes a sermon about what it means to embody strength. Weakness masquerading as love breeds contempt. Strength expressed as love breeds devotion. You must make your life into a fortress, not by closing the gates, but by fortifying the walls within yourself so thoroughly that no external attack can breach them. A man who can weather his own doubts can weather the doubts of others. A man who can sit with his own fears without flinching can hold space for others without faltering. If you would have a woman return to you, not out of need, but out of chosen desire, then you must become a destination she feels safer with than without. You must be the man whose internal state is not hostage to external conditions. Your reliability must not be loud but unmistakable, not performative but deeply real. A man who is his own master becomes the refuge others seek. If you build yourself into a cathedral of stability, you will not need to beg for anyone's affection. They will seek it as naturally as plants seek sunlight. The reliable man becomes a source of life, not because he gives everything away, but because he is so filled with meaning that he overflows. Your strength must be quiet enough to comfort, but solid enough to awe. You are not here to soothe every insecurity, but to embody the antidote to insecurity itself. Build yourself so thoroughly that even in your silence, others hear the music of certainty. Choose to become the kind of man whose love is a fortress, not a prison, whose embrace is a shield, not a cage. Women return not to men who entertain their momentary fantasies, but to men who make their lives richer, safer, deeper. Be the man whose very presence argues for the good, whose absence is a wound in the world, not just a gap. The world already has enough instability, enough false promises, enough fleeting pleasure. Be the man who proves through every thought, word, and action that reliability is not only possible, but profoundly beautiful. And in doing so, you will not only have women return to you, you will have built a life they and you are honored to inhabit. A man who seeks approval becomes a slave to every fleeting opinion, a puppet pulled by invisible strings he does not control, a hollow reflection of the expectations around him, lacking spine, lacking soul. Approval is a drug, and the more you seek it, the weaker you become. The more you trade your authenticity for counterfeit affection that vanishes the moment it is truly tested. Meaning, on the other hand, is eternal. It roots itself deep into the soil of your existence and allows you to grow into something impervious to the whims of the crowd. A man obsessed with approval is a leaf blown by every gust of social pressure, apologizing for his existence, shaping himself into smaller and smaller versions just to be liked. And in that very act, he kills the part of himself that could have commanded love instead of begged for it. Pursuing meaning requires that you are willing to be disliked, misunderstood, even hated, because you have sworn allegiance to something higher than your own comfort. Women, whether they articulate it or not, sense when a man lives for approval because he wears desperation like a scent that cannot be masked, a spiritual stench that repels more than it attracts. The man of meaning is magnetic, not because he asks to be seen, but because his presence demands it without a word, a gravitational force built from sacrifice, integrity. You cannot seduce life by pandering. You must conquer it by aligning yourself with truth, with responsibility, with the invisible order that demands your allegiance or leaves you to drift aimlessly. A man who chooses meaning becomes dangerous to all who try to manipulate him because he cannot be bought cheaply, and the world and women cannot help but respect what they cannot control. To chase approval is to offer your soul at a discount to people who could never properly value it even if they wanted to. Meaning teaches you to walk alone if necessary, to endure the loneliness of standing where others fear to stand, because you are answering a call they cannot hear. If you betray your mission for affection, you will soon discover that you have neither. If you stay loyal to meaning, affection will find you without you having to crawl for it. The approval-driven man tries to please everyone and ends up respected by no one, while the man of meaning divides, yes, but also defines. He draws a line in the sand and says with his life, "This is who I am, take it or leave it." Women do not love men who melt under pressure. They love men who withstand pressure without losing their essence. Meaning is what gives you the patience to say no when it would be easier to say yes, to endure the cold when it would be easier to chase any fleeting warmth. The man who chases approval has no spine because he has no center. He becomes whatever he thinks the world wants and loses himself in the process. But the man who chooses meaning understands that he was not born to decorate the world. He was born to shape it, to lift it, to redeem it in whatever corner he finds himself. Every step taken toward meaning is a step away from dependence, away from weakness, away from the slow death of your potential. Meaning requires sacrifice, of ease, of popularity, of convenience. But in return, it gives you a life that others watch with awe and wonder. Women long to stand beside men who have built something real inside themselves, something that does not flicker when life gets dark, something that does not vanish when their emotions shift. Approval is cheap and fickle. Meaning is costly but eternal. To live for meaning is to burn brighter the longer you live, to become more formidable the more storms you face. Women cannot help but be drawn to the man who can say, "This is who I am, and I will not trade it for your approval, no matter how beautiful you are, no matter how much I desire you." Because deep down, even if they test you, they do not want you to yield. They want you to stand firm, and teach them through your steadiness that security still exists in a chaotic world. Approval tells you to shrink, meaning demands that you grow, and you must decide whether you will live dying slowly for others' acceptance or live fully by refusing to abandon your deepest callings. A man who has meaning does not fear rejection because he knows that rejection from the wrong people is merely confirmation that he is on the right path. You must become so deeply rooted in your purpose that applause and criticism sound equally distant, mere background noise to the symphony of your mission. The approval seeker negotiates his dignity daily, but the man of meaning regards his dignity as non-negotiable. Every time you lower your standards to win someone's fleeting favor, you declare yourself unworthy of lasting respect. But every time you uphold your principles, even when it costs you, you forge a reputation that echoes long after your voice has fallen silent. Women do not return to the man who bent to their every mood. They return to the man who bent only to his highest values, who led them, not through force, but through unwavering conviction. The man of meaning becomes irreplaceable because his soul is a rare commodity in a world obsessed with shallow displays. Meaning fuels resilience, and resilience is the foundation upon which real intimacy, real partnership, real legacy are built. To pursue approval is to kill ambition, to neuter potential, to trade destiny for a pat on the head. But to pursue meaning is to choose the path where even if you lose the crowd, you find yourself. Women are not looking for men who will validate their every emotion. They are looking for men who will challenge them, inspire them, elevate them by embodying a standard that refuses to be lowered. The moment you decide to live for meaning rather than approval is the moment you step into the rare fraternity of men who move the world forward. You must become the man whose loyalty is to truth, not trends, whose commitment is to growth, not comfort. And when you walk that hard road without apology, you won't just attract respect. You will command it silently. And so, understand this with absolute clarity. If you wish for women or anyone of value to return to you, to seek you, to remain drawn to your presence over time, you must cease living like a man chasing shadows. You must abandon the childish hunger for approval and replace it with a relentless pursuit of meaning. Because only the man who embodies stability, strength, and purpose becomes an anchor in a drifting world. You are not here to entertain. You are not here to beg. You are here to build yourself into something immovable, something necessary, something so rare that losing you would be like losing a piece of life itself. If you organize yourself properly, if you become someone who others can depend upon even when everything else falls apart, if you prioritize meaning so ruthlessly that nothing cheap can buy your soul, you will not have to chase loyalty, it will chase you. You must become so ordered, so courageous, so fully committed to the best that is within you, that your life answers the deepest questions of those who encounter you. When you embody the masculine virtues of strength, responsibility, direction, and truth, you do not need to plead for connection. You become the connection. Women and the world itself will return not because you demanded it, but because you deserved it. And there is no greater victory than to live in such a way that your very existence speaks louder than any argument, any excuse, any need. So stand up, straighten yourself out, pursue the highest possible good, and become the man whose life no one can bear to walk away from.